Hey, this is Jono's World, conversation for everybody. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Jono from Jono's World podcast. This is episode 6 with Dr. Paul Fitzgerald. He is a hypnosis, and we are going to talk about hypnosis. What is it? What does it do? What's its benefits? Kind of demystify it a little bit. Most people have never heard from, talked to. You've seen the spooky YouTube videos, and
Yeah,
you've seen the TikTok back and forth on the Hollywood, but
sure.
we're going to get an accurate display of what hypnosis is here today. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself and your credentials and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Paul Fitzgerald. My doctoral work is in the area of spiritual formation. I have a doctorate from Asbury Theological Seminary. Graduated from Nazarene Theological Seminary. Pastored a couple of churches. Was on staff at a very large church here in Olathe, Kansas. And I worked for 18 years at denominational administration. So I have a very wide background, shall we say?
Yeah.
Part of what shifted my career from the institution was I had a crash and burn. Out of that, I realized I had work addiction. Churches would never hire a drug addict, but a work addict is like we get more for our money.
Right.
And out of my recovery journey there, I began exploring the whole issue of recovery and health and trauma, and that led me to do the doctorate ministry work, and then it led me to 25 years ago. My wife and I founded an organization called Heart Connection Seminars. And out of my doctoral work and out of her clinical therapy work, we created a seminar that's had about 6,000 people go through. And it was about an intensive seminar about internalized shame. My doctoral research was about internalized shame and trauma, how it affects our life, how it affects our relationships, how it smalls our life down. And so that's kind of been my focus through this whole process of what I do and how I've kind of evolved.
Right. And
That's
so
me.
nice. And would you say that, pretty much everybody who's listening to this has some sort of internalized shame?
Yeah, I think it's a common piece. I mean, a good friend of mine says it this way: nobody leaves childhood without exit wounds. Even even perfect families. The challenge with perfect families is that you're not perfect, and so you wind up
Right.
with some feelings. And I believe we all start off life with what I call life forwarding, the I can energy. I have a 4-year-old in my life now as a bonus grandchild. I call him a grandchild. And he's at this point in his life, he's saying, Pop, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I don't need your help, Pop. I can do it. We all start off that way.
Right.
But then life smacks us in the face. Sometimes very directly. Sometimes it's the absence of the love and respect that our bodies know we deserve, we don't get. And so another way I say it is, I think everybody suffers to some degree from long tail attachment disorder. I mean, our parents were broken. Our parents were wounded. Our
Right.
parents didn't have it all together. We thought they did, but they were just making it up, just like we've made it up as parents. And things can happen intentionally. Things can happen unintentionally with the best of motivations, and we
Right.
wind up with what I call emotional stoppages. Trauma is such a loaded word these days. I had so many people say, "Well, I don't have any trauma memory." But then we talk about it, and well, they had bullying at school, they had other situations, they had sibling rivalry, they had other things that they wouldn't have called trauma, but it became an emotional stoppage of that I can energy, and the I can turned into I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't risk that. I can't say that. I can't be vulnerable. I can't, or I have to. I have to be the best in the world. Fascinating thing about shame is that narcissists are deeply shamed people who cover
Mm.
it with all their narcissism. They don't look like they have an ounce of shame in them, but paradoxically, they have the deepest levels of shame.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And the narcissism is a very strong coping mechanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And so, um, given that, everybody has exit wounds and things like that, hypnosis is not for these extreme cases where the person is hearing voices and seeing things and like bouncing off the walls and they've been in and out of facilities. This is hypnosis can be used for that, of course,
Yeah.
but hypnosis is it's for Joe and Sally and Billy and
Yeah.
Tyrone and
Yeah.
all of them.
Well, I'm convinced that, and there's research that suggests that more than 50% of our self-limiting beliefs, I'm not talking about concepts, but our self-limiting operating beliefs are implanted before we're age 7 to 9 years old.
Wow.
I mean, before 7 to 9, you don't have critical thinking skills. So Christmas morning comes, and the kids get up, they look downstairs, and the cookies are gone, the milk is half drunk. Santa Claus really did come. It's fantastic. He made it.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
that same vulnerability or guyability, whatever you call it, when a child is told you're stupid, you're ugly, you can't do it right, you're just like your dad, whatever those words are, they take those in just with the same reality as, yeah, Santa Claus is here. And they get
Yeah.
planted not consciously, although sometimes kids can remember them. They get planted at an unconscious level, and they become like a computer virus. That may be the best modern analogy, where every once in a while it gets triggered and it plays an old program that was useful maybe when they were 5,
Right.
but now it's unuseful because they're 35 or 45 or like me, 75. But it's still playing the same program as if I was 5. And so hypnosis is not about your conscious mind. It really is about how do we um, communicate with your unconscious mind. And first of all, thank your unconscious mind for protecting you, because its intent is to protect you.
Right.
Even some of the things we would like, for example, if I have an experience that says, okay, don't take a chance to be vulnerable. Don't take a chance to be vulnerable. That's how it plays out today. Probably there was a place in my past where I was vulnerable and I got hurt, and this unconscious is saying, oh, don't take that risk again. Like I'm still a 5-year-old or 7-year-old,
Right.
12-year-old. And it's become unuseful. And so through hypnosis, we go in and we ask that part of us, our unconscious, that's been protecting us, to find a new way to do that that's more consistent with our current life now.
I got you.
And it doesn't.
Yeah. And so as we go through life, we get these nicks and scars and cuts and bangs and bruises. Like you're
Yeah.
walking through the woods and tree limbs are hitting you, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so you naturally are learning to kind of dodge all these tree limbs, even though the tree
Right.
limbs you might be walking on a sidewalk,
Right.
but you're
Right.
still dodging those tree limbs,
Right.
whether you really know it or not.
Well, it becomes a habit. We find ourselves in situations and we have habitual reactions to them, and we don't choose the habit. It runs its own program. Just like, for example, we have to practice to tie our shoes.
Right.
Most of us had to practice a lot. I don't have to practice anymore because I got a part of me that runs that. I learned to drive on a stick shift. And I mean, tell you, I remember the sweat of trying to coordinate everything. And now
grinding those
I can
gears.
drive. I can drive for hours and wonder, where am I? What have I? Did I miss my turn? Because something in my unconscious is running that program for me. Same thing with these habits. When they get triggered, we can be taken back to the same coping skills we had at the earlier time when there was an emotional stoppage. And in some cases, it takes us back to limit us to the same cognitive skills as we had at the time of the trauma. And so some of us have had 5, 6, 7, 10-year-old, 12-year-old selves in us making adult choices when we're 35, 45, 65. And
Right.
its intent is always positive. It's trying to protect us.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so those things that you learn that once protect you still has positive intent of
Yeah,
trying to protect you, but it's just not needed necessarily at 35 like it was 12. Right.
right, right.
And so,
It, its message, its bottom line message is, if you do this, if you take this risk, if you do something that's outside your comfort zone, whatever term we use, the bottom line feeling is you're not going to be okay. It's
right.
going to be bad. You're not going to be okay. And it becomes a physiological feeling. It's like fight, flight, or freeze, paralyze.
Mm-hmm.
And the freedom comes when we can transform that to be able to say, okay, if I'm vulnerable, I may get hurt, but I'm going to be okay. Suddenly, I have freedom, where before I didn't have freedom. And that's the process I use for hypnosis, to help people find the freedom to be authentic themselves.
Yeah, to remove those obstacles. Now, if you throw on YouTube or you watch a movie,
Yeah,
whenever they're setting up this hypnosis process,
yeah,
a lot of times you will see you're getting sleepy. They're looking at a watch. Your
yeah,
grandfather's one of those little grandfather pocket watches,
yeah,
going
yeah,
back and forth, or they're
yeah,
counting backwards, and then
yeah,
they have trigger words, or when I clap my hands, and
yeah, right.
and then you see where the hypnosis can just say any word and the person's instantly back into
Yeah.
their thing. How does hypnosis actually work? Like, what's the basics
What
of
is hypnosis?
how it functions?
Well, I tell people that, if people who go to those shows, first of all, you don't see the early part where they're weeding out people who are not willing to be hypnotized, because a lot of people aren't, and they're just not willing. Two types of people go to those shows. One is, I want to be hypnotized and experience it. The other is, I want to prove nobody can hypnotize me. So you never see the setup.
Right.
And frankly, I mean, I've never been to one of those shows, but I've watched some, and a lot of it is showmanship. I compare it to a lot of the spiritual showmanship of a lot of evangelists to the essence of the real good stuff that I've been in spiritual communities. And there's a lot of showmanship that goes on in spiritual communities too. But hypnosis is not something anybody does to you. Hypnosis is a natural phenomenon.
Okay.
We drive down the road and we get into highway hypnosis. I wonder, where am I? Where have I been?
Drive
There,
home and
there,
you're like, wait, how'd I get home?
yeah,
You don't
there have
remember
been
the last 10 minutes.
there have been days where I look back and say, what have I done today? I know I did something, but what did I do? I don't remember a thing, because I was kind of in a zone.
Right.
You go to a movie and people cry or they get scared as if it's real,
Yeah.
and it's not real. They're really kind of in a trance. Get in front of somebody's television when they're watching a Hallmark movie. Yeah, they're into it, and you stand in front of the television for a little bit and see what happens. because
Yeah.
if they're in the zone, they want that experience. So what I do, I will talk about myself. What I do is I help people tap into their hypnosis. One of the things I do is I ask people to begin to realize how powerful imagination is. And so anybody who's listening to this can do that. I tell people, close your eyes and hold your hand out and imagine I'm putting a baby's diaper that's filled with poop in it in your hand. And yeah. And then imagine your eyes are closed. Imagine that you're pulling it close enough you can really smell it really up close. And then put your tongue in it. You know.
Hmm.
And then I say, open your hand. What's in your hand? Nothing. But nothing has just activated your whole physiological, emotional system.
Gag
Your-
reflex and everything.
exactly. Your imagination can control everything. And so what we do is try to help the person get into a positive state of mind, alertness, awareness. When you're hypnotized, contrary to what you see, you hear everything the hypnotist says.
Right.
You don't not hear it. You've been hypnotized. I know you have because we did it.
Right. We did
You
it.
hear everything the hypnotist says, but you're not. The hypnotist is not talking to you. It's really talking to your unconscious. And in
Yeah.
therapy, hypnotherapy, I'm asking the unconscious to do what it really wants to do is to give you protection and wisdom and pleasure, and to do it in a way that's consistent with where you are at this point in your life and in your journey of life, as opposed to protecting you as if you were still a little kid.
Right. 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 So,
So hypnosis is a very powerful awareness. Flow is another way. When people get into flow, they're in a trance.
yeah. So it's just calming down and kind of revisiting that moment and,
Yeah,
removing not the effect of it because, that event has happened. Like there's no changing that event.
right, right.
But to lighten the
Yeah.
kind of what you're carrying today of it.
Well, until 2012, the assumption was by all the neuroscientists, therapists, doctors, you name it, that if you had an early childhood trauma, if you had a trauma of any kind, that that was hardwired into your brain. You are never going to get past that. And so therapy was primarily about coping skills. Let's
Mm-hmm.
calm the savage beast, which is not bad, and also developing competitive skills. So meditation, positive affirmations, breathing exercises, cognitive behavioral therapy, so we get our thinking straight. That'll overcome our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that it doesn't. And when the rubber hits the road, the emotion will win. Now, what we now know because of research, and really only 2012, we can remove the old trauma response. It can be deleted. And hypnosis is very effective for that. It's not the only way to do it, but it's very effective for doing that. Well, when you remove that old trauma response, you don't remove the memory of what happened, the narrative, but
Right.
you remove the trauma response. I had a lady this week, or a couple weeks ago, I saw her again this week, who had a phobia about vomit. She had a historic experience as a kid, and it was a very traumatic event, and it's impacted her life because she's anxious about going into a public restroom because who knows what you might see in there, and so it's really impacted her life pretty significantly. And so we removed it, and she doesn't have it now. She said that this a couple of days ago. She said that a couple of situations came up where before I would have hesitated to do what I did, but now I just did it, and I realized afterwards I didn't do what I used to do. So she still remembers the story,
Right.
but the emotional trauma, the most emotional reaction is no longer there.
It's no longer there.
Yeah, that's freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with hypnosis, like, are there any, because of what you see, like are there any risk to make, there's a couple of things that you said. One, as an autistic person, the frustration of like therapy just being based on coping skills
Right.
is unbelievable. Like
Yes.
that is my main frustration, and especially for adults who just found out they had autism.
Right.
There's nothing but TikTokers
Right.
to get your information from.
Yeah.
YouTubers, people who are living it out just like you are.
Yeah.
But for someone, say, who has autism, someone who is schizophrenic or has severe PTSD, you name them,
Yeah.
all of the isms and disorders, can it make things? Has there been times where it made it worse?
I don't think so. I don't know of any. I've asked that question to my mentors, and
Okay.
the couple of things is, first of all, a hypnotist cannot control you. Anytime a hypnotist would suggest something to you that would be against your moral values or against common sense, you would come out of hypnosis. You wouldn't go there. And hypnosis can do so many powerful things. Hypnosis, when it involves memory, what's called memory reconsolidation, that is removing old trauma memories like PTSD. By the way, I hate the D on the end of that because that makes it a thing.
Yeah.
It's like people say, "Oh, Dr. Paul, I have depression." Okay, give it to me. Well, you can't give it to me because it's not a thing. Tell me what you're depressed about, and we can deal with it. But we nominalize experiences.
Yeah.
But when we nominalize it, we move it to a level of abstraction that there's nothing. It's too big to do anything about.
And that's not to say that there's not people out there who are just chemically depressed and
Right. Right.
we're
Right.
talking about
Right.
we're talking about items that can lighten and make
Right.
things more helpful.
Right. And I recently saw a hypnotist who helped a woman who lost her taste buds and smell during COVID recover them in an hour.
Hey, I need to go talk to that guy.
So our unconscious really controls. It's like a supercomputer. It has every experience we've ever had in our entire life. Maybe before we were born, I don't know. It controls our breathing. It controls every cell in our body. It's in contact with every cell in our body. It helps us regulate our body. And our imagination affects all that.
Right.
And so our conscious mind is like a Game Boy compared to a supercomputer unconscious.
Right. I mean, it's the classic, I don't know why I responded that way.
Yeah.
It's that. Your subconscious responded that way. It was something in you from a long time ago, or,
I told myself I would never do that again.
Right.
Well,
and there you go.
Because it wasn't a choice, it was a reaction.
Right.
Our amygdala, that area between our left brain and right brain. The left brain's always logical, thinking about what's the next domino going to fall. The right brain's emotional. And so we try to control our emotions with our logic, except our emotions always win. Between the two is this thing we call the amygdala. It's always alert, ready to look for some lack of safety. And it's always on alert. And when it perceives something unsafe, even though we may not be aware of it consciously, it can move us into fight flight. And if it's a big loss, it can move us into freeze, and we just get paralyzed. Unfortunately, and unfortunately, many of us grew up in family systems or experienced life where the normal resting amygdala is not possible because we're on a high fight flight. There's so many things that we're on guard about,
Right.
which means we have stress all the time. We're always anxious about something. We're worried about something.
And
Here's
what's your definition of anxiety?
I was just going to give you that. Anxiety happens when we are imagining something terrible and we forget we're only imagining it.
There you
It's
go.
just our imagination. And
It's
we have
our mind's preconceived bad ending.
exactly. And we do have a choice of what we imagine.
Yeah. And so hypnosis is kind of taking those items, that have been scarred or damaged, just
Yeah.
taking them back under control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
It's about having the protect, and I'm just using the term protective mechanism parts. I mean, all this stuff is like metaphors. I mean,
yeah,
we talk about id and ego and subconscious and conscious, and those are all just metaphors to try to describe the
descriptors.
thing that we feel. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
descriptors.
this part is like a protective mechanism that is activated to protect us in a particular way from something else bad happening. By the way, it also protects that wounded part of us from us, because sometimes we are the most harmful to ourselves.
Yeah.
There's a story I use. You may know it, but before during World War II, Japan thought we were going to invade through the Pacific, and so they put soldiers out on these distant islands as early warning system. But they lost contact with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sitting out there waiting for the Americans to invade. And the war has been over for years.
They
And
were
they
there
don't
until
know.
like the 70s, weren't they?
Exactly. And that's kind of like our protective mechanisms. It's still trying to protect us, and it doesn't know the war is over.
Right. Yeah. So, what kind of issues do you see the most, successful treatments under like hypnosis? Like how many times does it take somebody normally? Like, and like, where, where's the success line so far?
Well, I suggest 3 sessions. I schedule 3 sessions with people. We do most of the work in the first session. I ask people about their phobia or their fear or their anxiety or their pain. Hypnosis is very effective in removing chronic pain, unuseful pain. And I usually ask them, what's the level of the pain? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 being the highest. So one day he said 15. I said, okay. And when we're done, I asked them, okay, go back to that place where you had the pain. What is it? 1, 0. And so it's very rapid. That's why I call what I do rapid. Because people say, look, I know I got work to do, but I don't want to be in 45 sessions.
Right.
I don't want 2 years. Now it's too much. And I don't want to have to tell my story again. I've told my story, my trauma story to 5 different therapists. And every time I do it, it hurts worse.
The church made me tell it in front of 6,000 people 20 times. I don't
Yeah.
want to talk about it.
No. So I can do hypnosis content free because your unconscious knows the story.
Right.
And it's transformative because we remove the trauma response.
And so you're just telling them to think about it. You're not asking them to relive it with you at all.
If they have some details that are important, but not the if they can describe the incident, like the lady with the vomit phobia, she described
Right.
what happened when she was 3 years old, and so okay, that's enough. Okay, we don't have to do any more. I had a young lady who a young lady who had she wanted to be a nurse, and she had a needle phobia because when she saw needles and blood, she fainted. It's hard to be a nurse. And so she talked about an incident that happened at school, a school nurse, da 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 da, and we took it away. It's no longer there, and so now she's enrolled in nursing school.
Nice. That's a fun story. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Now, how does
irritable bowel syndrome, um, anxiety, procrastination, weight loss. I have a lot of clients looking at weight loss because they've tried diets over and over again. And weight loss is an interesting problem because it's really about a habit. 90% of our eating is a habit, and we have emotional eating, and we use food for comfort food. Smoke cessation. We can take away smoking habit. Smoking habit is one of the most expensive habits you can have. I can turn a 20-year-old who was well 30-year-old up to a 30-year-old who smokes 40 cigarettes a day. I can turn them into almost a millionaire by taking the same money and investing it over 30 years. They'd almost have $1 million.
yeah, it's true. They're expensive. I I don't even know how much it is a pack. You know, I mean, $5-6 probably or more.
The average spend is about $10 a day.
Hmm.
Two
Now,
packs, 2 packs a day, or a pack and a half a day, or whatever.
now, how does that work? So, like, you have someone who's a smoke. First off, they have to. It's not a magic formula where you just
Right.
go in and pluck it out of their brain. They have to want
Yeah.
to quit smoking. They have to.
Yeah.
There's still going to be
Yeah.
a like you have to walk this out.
Yeah. Right. For any kind of change, whether it's hypnosis or any kind of change, people have to be what I call threshold. A threshold comes when I say something's got to change, and it's got to change now, and it's me.
Yeah.
If I can put it off, I'm not a threshold. If it's you got to change, I'm not a threshold. So the smoker has to say, I'm willing for this to be my last cigarette. Because when they walk out of my room at that point, they're done.
Right.
It's over. Now, some will call later on and apologize and say, "Well, I really didn't." But they're
Yeah.
apologizing to me, like, it's because they know I care.
Yeah.
You know, I care. Here's an interesting question I ask smokers: if your doctor told you today, by the way, John, what's one of your kids' names?
Parker.
What's
Parker.
Parker? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were just role plays, if you were a smoker and I said, okay, Ron Jonathan, if your doctor told you today, if you smoked another cigarette, would you die? You would die? Would you stop? Maybe.
Right.
But if your doctor told you today that if you smoke another cigarette, Parker would die, would you stop?
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't be a question.
So you do have a choice.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. See, smoking, it's a strange one. I don't get off on it too much, but we kind of set people up. The government sets people up, and the tobacco industry sets people up
I am
by,
from Kentucky.
by
It's,
calling it an addiction. When you put the word addiction on it, you're saying it's hard. It's really hard. It's really terrible.
yeah. So they're setting the mindset before, which is
Exactly.
Isn't that hypnosis?
Exactly. It's a post hypnotic suggestion. But smoking is a habit. I mean,
Right.
people increase their smoking to a certain point, but then they can smoke the same 20 or 30 or 40 cigarettes for the rest of their life. Well, if you're addicted to cocaine, you got to have more and more and more and more frequently. And this withdrawal of an addiction is almost always the same. If you have cocaine addiction in Chicago or Kentucky, you're going to have pretty much the same withdrawal symptoms.
Yep.
But the withdrawal symptoms for cigarettes all over the board.
Hey, when I withdrew from alcohol, it was horrible.
Yeah,
But when
yeah,
I read about alcohol withdrawal, it was the same. It didn't matter. It didn't
yeah,
matter where they were.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
exactly the same.
So it's more of a habit, but but yeah, cigarette smoking works. Hypnosis is very effective for that.
Now, say how does someone choose or determine rather that they are a good candidate for his hypnosis? Because for me, I was very skeptical because I'm autistic. And how does someone I'm really high wired ADHD bouncing off the walls. How does people go, okay, like I'm probably a good candidate and can try this?
Anybody who wants to be hypnotized can be hypnotized because you're going into your own hypnosis. It's not being forced on you. It's not being controlled. And so the hypnotherapist would find a way to help you get into your own hypnosis. And I've never had anybody who couldn't go into hypnosis.
Right.
I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But
Right. Right. Now, how many different hypnosis techniques is there out there?
well, there's a lot of different kind of styles.
No, you don't have to give a descriptor, but like,
It, it's a lot of these different styles, which you see different styles, is I will say in the right nicest way, it's showmanship.
mhm.
The basic piece of hypnosis is pretty much the same. Now there's the old days of swinging the watch and all that stuff. That's your grandfather's hypnosis, but hypnosis is really I mean, there's stage hypnosis. You see that on YouTube. I don't do stage hypnosis. But in terms of hypnotherapy, there's maybe a dozen ways to do it, but it doesn't really matter. One way is not better than another way. It's just a variation on the theme.
Right. Now, which version of it did you choose to do, and why?
Well, I certified with a particular hypnotherapist, and it was very cognitive. It was a lot of great information, and some practice. And I decided I wanted more, and so now I'm working with another hypnotherapist who they're in England actually, and he's been doing it for 40 years, I guess. And he has a style that is hypnotherapy as opposed to stage hypnosis. Very let's help people change what they want to change, and let's do it in a gracious way that's healing. Not that we are healers, but we help people tap into their internal healing process.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Like their own power of the brain. Like
Exactly. Exactly. Remember Jesus doesn't say, "Hey, I healed you." He said, "Your faith,
has
your
made you
own
well.
awareness,
Your belief.
your belief, your touch, you're in touch with your own inner awareness has helped you, has healed you." You know, one of the questions I get is about the link between hypnosis and spirituality. So
Yeah.
let me address that because that's kind of an elephant in the room
Yeah,
sometimes.
I was going to ask a couple of those questions
Okay.
there, but go ahead. I'll let you start off.
Well, first of all, Let me give you an image. Our unconscious, if our unconscious is the size of a beach ball, our conscious mind is about the size of a dime sitting on top of the beach ball. In our conscious mind, we can hang on to 5 to 7 clusters of information at any one time. Any more information, we got to let go of one of those clusters. Like right now, you're hearing me and you're sitting in a chair. You've been coughing a little
Right.
bit, and you're aware of all that, but you're probably not aware of where your tongue is. But now you are, and now you're not aware of where your feet
No,
is.
I was.
Okay.
My tongue is one of those weird things where it's an autistic
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
You're one of the
the
few.
I'm constantly aware of the texture and the
Yeah.
position of my tongue.
Yeah.
It's super weird.
So you got this dime sitting on top of this supercomputer, this beach ball. And so people ask, well, where's God? Well, God is all the way around the whole thing. God's around the whole thing. And our awareness of God is communicated most primarily through our unconscious, not our conscious logical mind. Unfortunately, most of our evangelical spiritual training has been cognitive. Let's memorize this. Let's learn this. Let's commit this to memory. Let's figure it out. Let's understand all this theology, which is very logical. And it's not bad. But when people talk about their spiritual experiences, they talk about it being caught up in the moment. They talk about being just enveloped by the Spirit. They talk about just
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmed, feeling just in tap with the whole world. Just that's an unconscious kind of awareness. Augustine or Augustine, whichever way term pronunciation you want to say. Well, he said a lot of stupid things. Okay, I don't agree with, but he said something really, really important. He said, "God, I have searched for you everywhere, and all the time you were within me, but I wasn't there."
Yeah.
Our heart wounds, our traumas will impact our spirituality. It'll impact our image of God. I had a
Totally.
young lady recently say to me, I knew at 6 years old from my teachers in Sunday school and my church services, I was never going to be good enough for God. I was going to
Yeah.
hell. And so I decided to practice how long I could live without water because I knew I couldn't get a drink in hell. 6 years old.
Yeah. That's a whole another door to step through right there. About what we shouldn't you shouldn't be talking about the 6-year-olds in church.
So, what she presented was I vacillate between over expectations that I can't meet and just procrastination because I just can't get out of bed and do anything because I know I'm doing it wrong. Where did it come from? The expectations never going to live up to planted years and years ago.
Yeah.
And she had an image of God that she could never experience love from because she was never going to be good enough. The big elephant in the church is religious trauma. With the church I grew up in, well-meaning people. I'm not arguing. They were working with their own stuff. But I look
Right.
back now, and it was religious. It was religious trauma, but it was normalized. You go into hell every Sunday, twice on Sundays, and then we called in specialists who were special evangelists who could scare us even more. And after a while, you get immune to it. Or they're singing 45 verses of Just As I Am, and somebody's got to go. So you go just to get out of there. But it was
Yeah.
normalized trauma.
Yeah. And that's I think I have my headphones on backwards here. And that's my kind of big if people's been watching my podcast and following my Facebook, they know that me and religion are currently on a trajectory that is not
Yeah.
parallel any longer. And part of that is because of this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I've heard so many pastors call hypnosis the
Yeah.
work of demons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mind control.
Yeah.
You get all this stuff, and especially in the charismatic world,
Right.
which, if there is any of my old friends who are Christians watching this, that's the world they're going to be coming out of, is
Right.
that
Right.
hyper charismatic
Yeah.
Pentecostal
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And so, like, the it it's a demon to
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Sure. Well, yeah. When I was doing my doctoral work in spiritual formation, I had a lot of very conservative people say, "Oh, you don't want to touch that spiritual formation thing. It's not logical." Well, okay. This may offend some of your listeners, or it may be a surprise to some of the listeners, or it may ring true with some of the listeners. Some of the most powerful, most effective hypnotists that any of us have experienced, unintentionally, not because they know they're doing it, are worship leaders.
Yep.
They hypnotize us. They get us into an emotional state of mind where we have an openness to
The
what's going on.
suggestions of the
Suggestion.
preacher.
And then, as pastors, and I did it, I get up and I probably planted post hypnotic suggestions in people's minds. I mean, I asked a pastor the other day, would you get up and preach without having a worship service before? Oh, no. The spirit got to have people in the right mood. Yeah,
Would you
exactly.
do an offering before you did 2 songs?
No, why no? No.
No. You got to get that giving energy up.
In the old days, it was songs like "Will the circle be unbroken?" "Tell mother I'll be there." All those emotional songs.
The anchor holds.
The anchor holds. And when you have an emotion like that and a unified experience like that, where everybody's doing this, you've got group hypnosis.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm going to take the risk. I may offend some of your friends. I don't know.
Listen,
Some of the services I've seen in the past, there were people running pews and running across pews and doing flip flops. That was more like a hypnosis.
listen. I've experienced it. I like, and I'm on the other side of it, and like,
Yeah,
it's hypno. It's a
but
very you're
99% of the people are not doing it maliciously. When you're inside of it,
exactly, and
when
that's
you're
what I'm
inside of
trying
it,
to. Yeah,
no. So I'm not giving any aspiration or any aspersions to anybody.
no, but it is hypnotic in nature, and even when you're experiencing it, um, like
Yeah,
that relaxation feeling, that
right,
is very, very hypnotic.
right, right. Here's the danger when you get into that kind of ecstatic mindset and you don't have an outlet. You're not brought back in a healthy way, and you have some post hypnotic suggestions that are not healthy. It, you can People can do things that are unhealthy,
Oh yeah,
and
cults
yeah,
start that way, but also even for me, like growing up in Appalachia, um,
yeah,
you know, the only voices that I had in my life that made sense were pastors.
right,
And,
yeah,
and so
oh, me
we're
too,
the faith pastors, like faith,
yeah,
faith, 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 faith.
yeah,
Gotta have faith, and just push. And so then you go to IHOP, and it's the same thing. But
yeah,
I don't have any adult in my ear,
yeah,
like trying to bring me back to reality, like speaking normalcy.
right,
Um, it's just all faith. And then having autism,
right,
I am going to mirror
yes,
all these faith people.
yeah,
And then I find myself at 35 going,
Yeah.
That was all in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. Yeah. And waking up is hard to do. The amazing thing is that there's a theme that runs through scripture about waking up, whoa sleeper, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. But waking up is hard. It crushes your world.
I grieved my faith
Yes.
like I had lost a family member.
Right.
Like it felt that way. And
Yes.
even, as someone like I'm not even sure of the afterlife and all that stuff anymore. I'm more removed from faith than probably
Yeah.
than anybody realizes.
Yeah.
But there's a real mourning. Like there's like
Absolutely.
this thing that you've been fed your whole life,
Yeah.
and you go
Yeah.
whoa, and it feels like a part of you dies.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's when we think about grief, is it destroys our imagination of what we thought was going forward.
Right.
And recovery is about recovering another imagination of alternative. But that
Recreate.
middle ground where we've lost the imagination of what we thought we had and discouragement and the disappointment and seeing through it. And then
The
reimagining,
reconstruction.
reimagining a future that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So grief
One,
is at that middle ground between,
yeah,
your vase being shattered
yeah.
and your vase being, melted down, reformed and put back, mentally.
It, uh, it, it's hard. It's hard to lose family. It's hard to lose that faith because it was a sense of safety.
Right.
And suddenly we're, we're in a place we don't feel safe. And what I experience is a lot of people who step out of religion, a form of religion, the first response is to be angry at the people as if they knew what they were doing and they've
Right.
hidden all it from you. They've been
Right.
lying to you.
That's not true.
That's not true.
No, in all cases.
It is a way, well, not in all cases. It is a way for us to avoid the feeling of how stupid was I?
Yeah.
Why didn't I see this 30 years ago or 20 years ago or
Right.
10 years ago? And a phrase that has been helped me that I've learned that helps me stay open-minded to a lot of things is simply that my map is not the territory. Whatever my map is, it's not the territory. There's more to it.
Right. Right.
And when somebody's map is constructed and they trust it, and somebody comes along with a different map, it feels like a personal attack against their safety. And we don't realize that, but when I believe the map is the whole territory. For example, the King James version is the only version to use. Okay, that's my territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody that comes along with a different translation, you're a threat to me personally
Mm-hmm.
because you're a threat to my security,
Right.
which is the wrong place to put your security.
Very much so.
Very much so.
Very much so.
In terms of spiritual journey, one of the things I encourage people these days is to explore what is sometimes referred to as the Aramaic Jesus. The Aramaic Jesus is different than the Greek Jesus. Aramaic Jesus, the Aramaic language. I believe Jesus spoke an Aramaic language. He didn't speak Greek. He didn't speak Hebrew. By the time
Right.
Jesus was born, Hebrew was not a functioning language. It was used in the synagogue and services like Latin was used in Roman Catholic services for a long
Right.
time. Nobody understood it.
And just like I think today, a lot of like the Jewish synagogues or the Messianic synagogues, I think they do Greek.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the Aramaic language, the thought forms of Aramaic are very process oriented. Even in Hebrew, in that story in the Old Testament where Moses says, okay, who do I tell Pharaoh that has sent me? Who do I tell these people that sent me? And we get that four-letter word. We translate it Yahweh, but it's four consonants. What most people don't know is that that's a verb form, not a noun.
Mm.
God is a verb.
Right.
Process. Not a noun.
Not a noun.
Not a
Not a
noun.
thing.
Not a thing. And the Aramaic language was not like Greek. In Greek, we make things into objects. In Aramaic, everything is in process. And there's a flow to the whole thing, a flow to life. It's the ancients understood the unconscious better than we do.
Yeah.
They didn't have the
Well, they have.
cognitive pieces of the Greek language yet. We suffered that because they got translated to Greek. They understood the flow of nature. They understood the interaction of the environment and life.
It was
And
their
that's why,
world.
it was a very oral language. And I believe Jesus communicated in that way. And if you look up Aramaic Jesus, Neil Douglas Klotz is a great writer about it. It's fascinating to look up Jesus and see Jesus from that word perspective rather than from the Greek. And I studied the Greek and I studied some Hebrew, and nobody ever taught me Aramaic because it would mess things up too much.
Yeah.
But hypnosis for me is a way I can help people transform, remove old trauma responses, and put them in touch with their inner awareness. And that inner awareness is in touch with the spirit.
Right.
So
Gotcha. And so, for the Christians who do, make it through this entire episode without turning it off, they can rest assured, like if you're watching on Spotify, I'll have his link linked in the description. Same if you're on Facebook, it'll be tagged. If it's a clip on TikTok, then just click on my profile. But they can rest assured that they won't get a demon if they book a session with you.
no, not at all, not at all. I tell people for a long time, various kind of modalities I've worked in. The same tools can build an outhouse or a cathedral.
Yeah.
It's not the tools, it's the intent of the person using them.
Right.
So you want to have some credibility or some feeling of safety in the person who you're working with, whether that's a therapist or not, whether it's a counselor. Not all counselors are,
Right.
not cut out of the same mold.
And I can say, like, when we did, hypnosis, I was very relaxed. I was seeing things very clearly in my mind's eye. But at any point, if I would have wanted to, I could have set up.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
could have absolutely just, I'm done,
Yeah, absolutely.
at any point. And so just as someone who's been hypnotized, like, it is your job. Like, it is a two-way street.
Yeah, it's cooperation. It's a
It's
cooperation.
cooperation. You got to
Yeah,
relax yourself. You got to be open to it. You got to
yeah,
let your imagination take you there. You got to follow the process
yeah,
to get to that state of relaxation.
yeah,
And it's not a spooky, like, literally, you can pull yourself out just as much as you're
yeah.
working to put yourself in. It does not take that much work to pull yourself out.
Not at all. No, not at all. No, nobody can force you to do anything
No.
is against your will or against your. I tell people that the things you see on those shows on YouTube and so forth, Most of those people, I mean, I don't want to throw aspersions on them, but many of those people with 3 or 4 drinks, they probably do the same thing.
Oh yeah,
So it's,
yeah,
it's not
Eh,
totally out of their character to do some of that stuff.
right, exactly, and it's not anesthesia. Like you don't
Yeah.
go out
Yeah.
and you're just in there messing around of their subconscious. It's nothing like that.
One of the questions I get is because I do 99% of my hypnosis on Zoom.
Right.
And people say, well, what happens if the power goes out? Well, if the power goes
Batteries.
out, you're not locked in hypnosis the rest of your life. You'll probably have a nice rest, and you'll wake up and say, "Oh, power's out."
Yeah. Well, and even then, you're not. I wasn't asleep.
No, no,
I wasn't asleep at all. And I mean, you have cell phone battery, and like if you do it on your cell phone, it just kicks over to cellular. You're
yeah,
good.
yeah.
You just keep going.
Not long ago, I had a lady who was we were working together, and in the middle of it, her dog came in the room and was sympathetic with her apparently, and came over and licked her face while we were doing it. And she just kind of pushed it away, and we went on. It didn't bother. It didn't break the hypnosis at all. It was fine.
But that's in touch dog.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's
That's
awesome
right. Yeah,
and cool. And so I think that pretty much covers all of the. I found you on Facebook through a friend. Through Amber.
yeah.
But and I'll link your Facebook in here. But it's just your name, which is right. Well, I don't know where
Well,
to point. It's to his right there on his shoulder there. Just
my,
type that into Facebook and he'll pop up.
yeah, my website is just pauldfitzgerald.com.
All right, there you go. Put a .com on there and
Yeah.
it'll pop up. Now, is there any limitations to what you do as far as like someone comes to you with some extreme stuff?
Yeah.
Like, is there some times where you go, we're going to defer this to something else? We're
Oh
going
yeah, yeah.
to
If you're taking a lot of psychotropic medications, if you have epilepsy, if you have seizures, those kind of things. I mean, even with pain, for example, somebody has a lot of chronic pain. I would want you to be in contact with your doctor. I don't want to do something, and I can't necessarily get rid of pain. I should say this: I will not get rid of pain that's useful.
you can help get rid of the some of the mental sting of,
That's right.
for
That,
instance, some of the healings that you see. I'll just say that as instance. A lot of times, most likely, the people are already better, and that faith, that belief, makes them realize it.
that's right. That's right. It's
Um,
our brain sometimes is still trying to protect our body with pain when it doesn't need to.
when
And
it
so,
doesn't need to.
yeah, and so we have some techniques to help people in a very short amount of time get rid of unnecessary pain. I had a lady recently
That's
who had
awesome.
30 years of fibromyalgia, and she doesn't have it now.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I can help people, I want to help them. When I can't help them, I don't want to. I don't want to. You know, if they're ready, I'll help. If not,
Right.
okay.
Right. And some people, everybody's brain, everybody's body, everybody's chemistry,
Exactly.
totally different. If it worked for me, it might not work for you, but it might work for him.
Yeah. Hypnosis does not do damage. That's
Right.
that's the beauty of it.
It's
And
worth the shot.
again, because I don't know how to help your unconscious do that. You don't know how to help your unconscious do that. We ask the unconscious to do the work, and
And
it
we
knows
just, right,
how to do it.
right, right. And I will say, you, whenever there is intense moments, like there was a moment like in it where I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Right.
Like where I literally was like, no, I can't let myself go. And like so I felt heat. I felt like a physical manifestation of like my body temperature probably rose to 101 to 102.
That's
Like there and I felt that for a few days of like, of just like,
yeah,
no, I don't want to let myself go through that again. Um, so like that defense that is still there,
right,
I had to, it was like the hypnosis kicked it off.
right. Yeah, and it takes it after the session is over. There's still an installation process where your unconscious is installing it and helping it be compatible with other parts of your life. If you've
Right.
gotten, for example, if you have this protective mechanism that says, don't be vulnerable, you're going to get hurt if you be vulnerable. Okay, it's worked. And now I don't have it. But I've trained the rest of my life around not having it, not doing that. And so when I start being vulnerable, other parts of my life say, wait, we didn't do this. We don't do that. What are we doing here? So it takes some time to install and adjust to the whole thing.
Yeah. It's like when you update your operating system on your computer,
It's a
things
process.
are in different locations.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Life's a process.
It is. Well,
I used to, in the seminars I did, I would say all the time, okay, it's a process. It's a process. And people thought I was just talking about it takes time. What I was really saying was God's a process. God's at work at all this. Don't get hardening of the categories is the old term. Don't get hardening of the
right.
categories.
Right.
Be open. Be open to
Exactly.
what the Spirit is doing inside you for you.
Everybody's got their own journey.
Yeah,
Be open.
we read about how many sermons did you and I preach about? Listen to the still small voice. Listen to the still small voice. Well, when you got all these other voices yelling and screaming, and which is the still small voice? You got to get rid of the other loud voices before you can really hear the still small voice.
Yep. It's very true. Um, Gosh, I preached enough in that 17 years to fill 5 lifetimes. I think one year I preached 500 times in one year,
Wow.
maybe
Wow.
more.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was tiring.
Augustine's words again. God, I've searched for you everywhere. And you all the time you were within me, but I wasn't
But I
there.
wasn't there. I was busy running the business. Hey, this is Jono's World, conversation for everybody.